My name is Ebenezer Safford. I'm a business strategy consultant and a data specialist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This channel has been dedicated in the teaching of data science and um, influencing others to get into the field, as well as help others who want to actually learn one or two tools. In January, I've dedicated this to teach Power BI. I've done 3 other videos prior to this. This is the fourth of the video. That's why it's titled Day 4. So if you've not actually watched the other video, kindly go and watch those videos, and then we would it would help you understand this particular one. We started with how to download the BI, went through the various parts of the BI and looking at what are the various sections, the various tabs that are in the BI. We then going through the transformation of the data using the query editor, and then went to modeling the data in the BI itself. We started with calculated columns and ended with calculated measures. Today we are going to continue with the measures. Measures are one of the most important features of the Power BI, and you understand maybe as we go on today. One of the key things that you need to understand is that the measures and the calculated columns are calculated using the DAX language, which is the data expression language. I think the DAX language is pretty straightforward. It's English, it's logic, it's easy to understand. So I'll go straight into my files and we'll go ready into action. So the various, let me open my file here. Okay. So what we have here is the COVID-19 file. I think what we've been using is the Power BI training. Okay, so this is the Power BI training file that we've been using. We have our calendar table, the COVID-19 cases. The last one we brought in the deaths to add to the COVID-19, and then we have the financials as well as the January and February, which we use for the merging and I think appending. Then there was world population, which we'll use later. So we are going to learn more about measures. But for you to understand how to use measures, first let's create a table that would contain all the measures that you'll be creating. So my convention is that anytime I'm starting a Power BI assignment, I create a measures table, because sometimes you may be creating as much as 50 measures and you may not find where they may be. So the best approach is to first create a table where you'll be storing your measures. To do that, we'll do the enter data approach. So once you click on enter data, there will be column 1. Leave it as that and change maybe the table name to formula, so as it will be storing all the formulas that you can call it measures, whatever you want it. Okay, just for the sake of this tutorial, but I normally call it formula. So let's call it measures and let's load. So there will be a new table called measures just for the tutorial and for your work, sorry. So once a measures table is created, it means that all the measures that we'll be creating, we'll be putting it in that table, so as it's easy to look out for. So now we have our measures table. Well, why is there measures? It means that maybe I had created an earlier one. Let me rename. Oh, okay, it's actually a reserved string. So maybe let me call them let me just go back to my old name, which is formula. All right. Sorry. So it's going to store all the measures that we'll be creating. All right. So the column 1 is the column that was already there. We'll delete it after we've created our first measure. So let's go straight to the new measure. We are going to create a new measure. So we click on the new measure, and you have measure is equal to, and I told you anything that comes before the equal to is the name of the measure. So total sales is equal to, we are going to use the function sum. just like what you would have done in X. When you click on the sum, actually it shows how the iteration is supposed to be done. So it gives you the syntax. Sum, start with open bracket and then put in the column name. So sum, open bracket, the column name is financials table sales. So that is it. Then I'll close it and click enter. The total sales already exists. Let me search. To search for an already existing, you can just go to the fields pane and then you see total sales here. So we've already created. Let me delete it and recreate it for. Alright. So I delete that and then wow, laptop was quite slow. So measure is equal to, or let me call it total sales okay, because I've been searching. Oh, interesting. So let's start again. New measure. So you write new measure, you write the name of the measure, then you write, so it's total sales, which is the measure that we wanted to write. So I think it's already been registered here. So let me just click on it. Total sales is equal to sum, and like I said, the syntax is already there. Column name, and then you go look for the column that you're looking for, which is financial sales, and then click enter. So we have our total sales. So this gives us the total sales that we have. We can also look at the total quantity, which it could be a new measure. So new measure is equal to total quantity total quantity is equal to sum of, the column is units sold. Yeah. So I have my total quantity and my total sales. The reason why you are seeing it come under the formula table is because I clicked on the formula table before I created the new measure. Sometimes you may have created it under a different table. To move it back to your formula table, all that you need to do is to just click on the formula or on the measure. You will see that there will be a measure tools that would pop up. When you go into the measure tools, the first thing you see there is total, the name, which is the total quantity. So I can change the name by editing here, and the home table. So this is where, if let's say it was under the calendar, I can come here and change it into the formula table, and you can format it actually. So let's say total quantity, the format is what, general or a whole number, or maybe a decimal, maybe. So let's say maybe that one is a whole number, so you can change the quantity here, and for the, that's the format. Then for the total sales, we can also come here, change the thing into a currency, the format into a currency. So that's how you edit the, for like you format the measure. And let's say my currency is Ghana cedis, so I'll pick Ghana cedis. So as it's already formatted and it's 2 decimal places. All right. So that is how you format a measure. So we have total quantity and total sales. Then let me introduce a third one, which would use a different formula or a different function. We have used sum so far, so let's use a different function, which is what I call the count rows. There's also another function that counts the number of rows, so let's call it maybe total transaction. So what I'm saying is that it should go and count the rows of which table? Of our financials table. So the total transaction is each row in the transaction, right? So each row of the financials table is going to give us the total transactions. So count rows financials table will give us the total transaction. And now let me delete the column called column 1 because it's not part of our measures. So I delete it. So now I have only measures in the formula table. I want to make sure that this table is now a measures table. To do that, I'll just close the field and open it again. You see that it now having that calculator feature that the measures had. So a measure is indicated in the BI by this calculator button. So once I close the field and open again, the whole table is now a measure table. You see the other tables are like the normal tables, but this is a measure table because it contains only measures. And now we've created 3 measures: total quantity, total sales, and total transaction. And we use sum so far and count row. We could have used a count, a simple count, but I just wanted to use the count rows. Alright, so this is our total sales, our total transaction, and our total quantity. One cool thing about measures is that you can use a measure, you can reference a measure in another measure. Let's do that and let me show you what I'm talking about. So I can actually, let's say to calculate, let's create maybe a new measure. So I have my total sales. Let me now look at my total cost of goods sold. So total cost of goods, or let me just abbreviate it with total COGS. So in this we are going to look at the sum again. So it's sum of, in our financial table, the cost of goods sold. So that becomes our total cost of goods sold. And we know that for us to get profit, we just have to subtract the sales minus the cost of goods sold. So I'll just come here and create a new measure, which is called total. So you see, I've already created, just for this tutorial, 5 measures already. And now we are going to call it total. We are going to call the total sales, which is the measure we created, minus total cost of goods sold. And we click enter. Now we have a new measure, which is total profit. Let me edit all those new ones we've created into currency, which is money, because they are all currencies. So total cost of goods sold is a currency, and the total profit is also a currency. So now we have 5 measures created. Now let me start doing some display. Let's open a new page and see how it is displayed. I'm going to use the card to display my new measures that I've created. So we have total sales. You see it. Let me bring another card. We have total cost of goods sold. It's in 2 decimal. Let me open it up. Okay, and we have our total profit. So you may be asking, what is the difference between this and the one that we were doing earlier on? Because in the financials, if you actually bring in the sales, cost of goods sold, and the profit, they also give you the same thing. Yes. The reason is that you see the sigma here. This is what we call implicit measures. Power BI on its own have actually created a measure in the sales, which is used whenever you actually drop it in a card. But the best ways of actually building a report is to create the measures actually for them. You understand? Because like I'm saying, if you wanted to use these measures again in creating new measures, you cannot use these columns. You get it? In measures, you need an aggregator to use a column, and aggregators are what we call the sum, count, divide. So there are two main types of formulas. One is an aggregator, which is the sum, the rows, and we have what we call iterative functions. Sum of x, maybe we'll do one of that and you understand. But for now, we are using just the aggregators, which is sum, count, divide, because aggregators is what can call a particular column to be used as the measure. So you have this. One cool thing you need to understand about measures is that, like I said, they are calculated on the fly. So this one, it is when you drop it in there. So when we created the measures, you realize that there was nothing created. It was just a calculator thing that you saw here. When we were creating the calculated columns, you saw that once you create a column, you could see it. It's visual. The reason is that the measures are contextualized. What do I mean? It means that whatever you use them to do is when they are calculated. So for instance, the same measure that we calculated as total sales, if the measure is used, so I've brought in a table, if the measure is used for, let's say, countries, let me bring in a country and bring in my measure, which is total sales. So you see that this total sales now is being attached for the total sales of Canada, total sales of France, total sales of Germany, and total sales of Mexico, total sales of. So it is contextual. So it's dependent on what combinations I'm using. That is what will be calculated on. And when I click on Canada, you see that it will change over here with this total sales, total cost of goods sold. Now let me probably add something like, let's say, product. So now you see the total sales that we calculated, it's now based on the product that I've added. So I have Canada, the product, and its total sales. Let me add probably the other ones that we calculated: total transactions and total quantity. So you see, I now have here my total. So in Canada, the product Amarilla, the total quantity is 29232. The total quantity sold. The total sales is 3,850, and we have a total transactions of 18. That's the rows that it was counting. So that is the beauty of the measures. They are contextual. Depending on what you put in your visual, that is what it will calculate on. So like I was telling you, that it is not calculated static, it is calculated on the fly. As you use it, then it calculates. So it is contextual. For instance, if I bring in a filter right now and filter, let's say in my same financial table, I filter, what you call it, let me filter, let's say product. So let me filter, let's say Passio. So it recalculates only Passio and shows. So it's very contextualized. That is the beauty of the DAX or the calculated measures. So now at least we know how to create calculated measures. This is the basic form of measures. We are going to go a step further in the measures, and this time we are going to use the COVID data. So let me create a new table and probably rename this as the financial formulas, so as we do not get confused with the financial and the COVID. So this time I'm going to do some additional creation of measures. So this measures were just straightforward: total sales, total quantity, total profit, total cost of goods sold. It's pretty much straightforward. So let me create a new table, and now this table would be called, so enter data, and this table would be called maybe COVID formulas, COVID-19 formula. So we are going to work on the COVID-19 data set now, and let me load. So there we have it. We have our COVID-19 formula. So we are going to create our first formula based on the COVID-19 cases. You remember, in our COVID-19 cases, let me just open the table so as you would understand. So in our COVID-19 cases, we have province, country, latitude, longitude, date, confirmed cases, and the death. So first, let's create a DAX which looks at the total confirmed cases. But the interesting thing about the data, that is why when you are doing the Crips DM, I told you that first, before you do any project, understand, you need business understanding. Understand what you are going to do and understand the data itself. So for the COVID-19 data, let me probably bring it here and you would get a better understanding. What happened was, we have date and confirmed cases. So what happens with the data, with the COVID-19 data, is that it is cumulative in nature. Every day, what happens with, let me refresh my data set so as it reflects the current date. What happens is that, to avoid the changing of data by government, which would affect the data set by the Johns Hopkins University, what they did was that every day they bring the up-to-date confirmed cases. So it's like a cumulative data of the confirmed cases that you get. So it's like, if today the total cases is 300,000, that is what they bring out as the total, or the confirmed cases for today. That is what you would get. So each day's confirmed cases is actually a cumulative confirmed cases from when the disease started till to date. So it's the totals of each of the cumulative. That is what they use for the confirmed cases. So if you just use a sum of confirmed cases, you are going to have an addition of the totals. So it's like, yesterday we had 5 million cases so far. Today there are 6 million. So what will happen is that you add the 5 million, you add the 6 million, which was not representative of the actual cases that we have. So we are going to look at how to correct that. I mean, so that is another way of using the DAX. So for instance, if I put, let me create a new formula under, let me select the table so as it goes under the COVID-19 formula straight away. Okay, so new measure, let's call it total confirmed trial. because it's not actually the total confirmed. And let me do a sum. Now you understand how to look for the COVID-19. You can even start typing maybe confirmed. You see that it would come. All right, so let me close the bracket and create this measure. Let's delete the column. So delete it. All right, so we have total confirmed cases created. Let me bring a card and display the total confirmed case. 10 billion cases. I mean, that's definitely not true, because like I said, it's because it's summing the totals, the cumulative totals for each day. That is how the data set is. So we need to understand our data. How do we correct this? So to correct this is basically to tell Power BI that only return. So first, I always say when you are doing measures, first solve it logically. How would you have solved this logically? The logic is that every day is giving you total of the previous days. So asset, it's more of an asset figure. So asset January, maybe that's, I'm sure yesterday is the last date. Asset Thursday, um, so asset Thursday, January 20th or so, 2021, our total confirmed cases is about, let me look at the, okay, this Wednesday, so Thursday is 21st. It's very thin. I'm trying to get a grip of it. Okay, so you see it's around 97 million. So that is actually the total confirmed cases for the whole world as at now. So I'm saying that it's always cumulative because they didn't want to go back, and now when a country changes maybe a previous day's data, now they are going to, so they just report the cumulative as at a particular day. So to currently get that total cases as a measure, what do we need to know? We need to ask DAX that return the confirmed cases for the maximum date. Maximum date in the sense that the latest date in our data set, make it, go and check its confirmed cases and return that for us. I hope you get it. So now it's about go and look for the total cases of the current date in my data set and return that. And we are going to use a formula, a quite complex formula. So let's go now back into our creation. So this time we are combining a lot of other formulas, and that is what we call the variables. Like, we are going to do what we call variables in measures. So we are going to create a formula inside another formula and combine other formulas to actually give us the answer. So like I said, logically what we are just going to tell the BI is that go and look for the maximum date or the latest date that I've created, and now look for the total confirmed cases of that latest date and return that as our total confirmed cases. So let's do total confirmed cases. Total confirmed now is equal to, so like I said, we're going to create what we call a variable. So you do shift enter, you see that it's 1 there. To go to the next line, it's called shift enter, and now we are going to create that DAX. Like I said, it's more of, I would probably just paste it and would, let me go and copy and paste. Then I'll take you through just for time's sake. Let me just copy the formula that I've done already there, and then paste it here. I'll give you access to this. Alright, So what this formula is saying is that calculate. So when you type VAR, it will be in blue, and it's a variable that we are creating, which would hold a variable called latest date, which is in green. So when you create a variable, so it's like variables are like measures that would never be reused. So they are not created inside the tables. They are just created inside the measure that we are creating. So we have var latest date is equal to the max function returns the maximum, or the, if in terms of date, it will be the latest date. If it was numbers, it will be the biggest number. So what we are saying is that it should create a variable called latest date, and it should be the maximum or the latest date in the COVID-19 cases. So COVID-19 date. And then we are saying that after it has created that variable, which is latest date, it should now, after every variable, you have to start with a return. So what should it return now? So we are saying it should return by calculating the sum of the COVID-19 cases. This time it should filter all our COVID-19 cases where the COVID-19 cases date is equal to latest date. This is a quite complicated DAX. Okay, so we called it COVID-19 cases. So this is where it gets more interesting. So we are solving the problem of the total confirmed cases, not returning the cumulative sum, but now just returning the COVID-19 cases for the latest date. And that's what we've done. So we've used the what we call the almighty formula in Power BI, which is calculate. Once you calculate, it would give a sum of confirmed cases. So we are saying calculate the sum of confirmed cases, and in the calculate function it always return a filter. And we're saying that it should filter only when the COVID-19, so filter would ask you to start with a table. So the table is COVID-19 cases, and we are saying when the column COVID-19 cases date is actually equal to so filter where COVID-19 cases, the confirmed cases is equal to this latest date, because this is the variable latest date. So that is the formula. I'll share the file with you so as you'll be able to copy and probably go through it. So let's do enter. This is the total confirmed cases. So this is more like an advanced DAX, but it's not that advanced. It's just about 9 lines of code. Alright, so now we have our total confirmed cases in the COVID formulas, and now we can come and display that, and let's see what that one returns. Well, it returns, this is the trial. Let me look for the total confirmed cases where we put it. So it went under calendar, and like I thought, just come to the measure to change it from calendar into our COVID formula. Alright, and there we have it. So I can then come close this and then bring this. Oh, it's returning blank. What's happening? It's a whole number. So max COVID-19 date. Let me see if let me clear this. Wow, our COVID-19 date here doesn't look okay. It's because trying to see what is. Sometimes you have to go through the iterations to understand what is happening to your formula. So it's saying that calculate var COVID max of COVID-19 case. So let's probably go through it one by one and return calculate some COVID-19 cases, filter COVID-19 cases where confirmed cases is equal to earlier date. Okay, let me probably close the relationship between the COVID-19 cases and the date and see what happens. I'm trying to test and see what may be causing my. Alright, still. Max calculate COVID-19 confirmed cases, filter COVID-19 cases where COVID-19 confirmed cases is equal to the latest date. Let me check my formula again. I got it. So it's rather confirmed cases where the date, I rather did the total confirmed cases rather than the date should rather be equal to the latest date. All right. So these are some. So now you see that it's actually returning the latest date. So that is another way of writing DAX. This is what we call variables. Okay. So now let's go back to look at maybe let's create other DAX by doing some computations on our COVID data. So let's say we want to find out the total confirmed cases per 1 million people, because some countries have 200 million, a population of 200 million. So we want to look at maybe the total confirmed cases per 1 million people. So now let's go back to our formula. Let's do a new measure. So confirmed per 1 million. And this time we're going to use what we call the divide function. So divide, this divide function is what it really helps when a number is even divided by 0. There's an alternate result which you put there, so that there's nothing like infinity or some div x which you would have gotten in Excel. So let's say divide, the numerator is total confirmed cases. Oh, I have not finished, sorry. So let's go through the iteration. It said divide numerator, then comma the denominator. The denominator is our world population. If you remember, we had the population there. Shoot. So let me do sum of population, because you always need an aggregator too. So our denominator is the sum of population, and our alternate result, sum of population, and our alternate result is 0. So as you can see it clearly, I'm saying that, but so you should divide the total confirmed cases by the total population and then multiply it by 1 million. So that is for our covered cases per 1 million people. Okay, so let's display that. So we can look at it per country now. Let's bring in a filter and look at our COVID cases per country. Let's say Afghanistan, 7.1 per 1 million. So now we've actually normalized our data sets per the population. Let's look at South Africa, 180. So now we can even plot countries. So instead of the date, we can plot countries per the confirmed 1 million people. I've filtered South Africa. So you see, US has the most confirmed cases per 1 million people, irrespective of their population. So now we've normalized population by the 1 million people, irrespective of the number of people in your country. So US still has the most confirmed cases per 1 million people, followed by India, followed by Brazil. But let's compare that to maybe the total confirmed cases, so as you understand what I'm saying in the normalization. Okay, so now let's look at, so I'll look at country per total confirmed, not per 1 million. So 24 million, India, Brazil, Russia, still in the same order. So countries with the most people seems to have the highest number of confirmed cases. So USA leading the pack. All right. So let's look at another concept. I think this would end our DAX tutorial. I would probably in the month of April do a very detailed video on, or we'll have another 3-day session on a master class on the DAX alone. But this is at least some elementary DAX that you would need for your calculation. There is count. There are so many other functions that you will have to learn, but mostly the basics are the sum, count, the count rows. There is count if. There is a lot of other. For instance, we can look at previous year. So let's probably look at that also from the financials. So this is just for the COVID-19. Let's go into the financials and probably learn some new DAX language. So for instance, we have the total cost of goods sold. Let me use this particular, the page 5. So total cost of goods sold, or the total sales. Let's say I want last year's sales. So let's create a new measure. And I call it last year sales. We are going to use a function called previous year. Say look for the date let's use the calendar date, because the calendar date is already connected to escape this intelligence, comma. So to do that, we first have to use the calculate function. Calculate, the expression is what? Total sales. So calculate the total sales and filter previous, sorry, and filter the previous year. It's asking for the date, which is our calendar, or let's even use the function called date add. Date add is easier to use. So the date add would look for the date, the calendar date. It would ask for the number of intervals, which is -1. So it's previous year. Then we are asking it to look for the year. The interval is year. So what this function is doing is that we are saying you should calculate the total sales, but you should filter the calendar date -1 year. Basically, that's what we've done here. So that's the last year's sales. Previous year was not working like I wanted it to. So that's last year's sales. So now let's put it in a card. Anytime you do a measure, try and put it in a card so as it's easier for you to see what you've created. Wow. So let's format it into currency. So we have the currency as the last year's sales is almost equal to this year's sales. Why is it that? I told you that DAX are contextual. Now we've not told them, or we've not told the BI which year we are referring to. So it's just returning last year. It doesn't know which last year. So when we bring in, let's say, a filter, and now bring in the calendar table, and go and probably bring in year, and filter maybe, let's change it from to a list, let's say 2014. Now you have 2014 sales as 92.31, and the last year's sales is now 26.42, because now you are referencing a particular year. So the last year sales that you are talking about is 2014 compared to 2013. Do you get it? So now we can even calculate the change in sales by doing total sales minus last year's sales. So that's another DAX function you can create. So let's say the change in sales. Now let's do a new measure called change in sales, which is total sales minus last year sales. Enter. So I have my change in sales. Like I said, anytime you create a measure, it's ideal that you check it and look. Okay, let me format it again so as you know it's in cities. So that's our change in sales, and it is 65.90 million. All right. So that is the change between 2014 and 2013 sales. We can go further and do a percentage change. So let's create a new measure, and we can call this percentage change, which would now be divide the change in sales over the base, which is total sales, and then the alternate result is 0. That if it's divisible by a number that is not divisible, just return 0. That's all you are saying, and that's what we have. So we have the percentage change in sales, the percentage change. Let's make sure that we format it as a percentage. And now let's probably bring it, I said every time you create, so it's 71.38. So we have the percentage change in sales from 2014 and 2013. So this is our measures and can be used on tables. So for instance, this percentage change that we created, let me add it onto our product table and see what will happen. So you see, you have the percentage changes of Amarilla for Canada, Caratera. So every product that we have in the country, we have the change. That's how useful the measures are. It can be used for different things, like can be displayed and can be used in a table to showcase other things that we want to show. You can use the same concept to create the profit margins. That is because we have our total profit. The profit margin will be total profit over the total sales. You get it. So that is about DAX, and it's the fundamentals of DAX. In the future, like I said, I'll do probably one whole video on the advanced DAX in another 3 days, maybe in April. But this is the end of our DAX tutorials and day 4. Subscribe to my channel if you've not, and the last video is going to be very interesting. We are going to go into the visualizations. So unfortunately I could not do a lot in this because our time is short, and hopefully we can look at other things. So let me save this file and probably would share with you as the day 4. So it will be added to the link. Subscribe to my channel, and I just cannot wait for the day 5 because you're going to go into more of visualization and data storytelling. So thank you very much and have a good day.